Good evening, everyone. This is Hardee and Steve Watch Star Trek. Thank you for joining us. We are on episode 4, The Naked Time. How are you doing tonight?
I'm feeling great this fine Thursday evening in November.
Yay. I am too. And let's get to it. The Naked Time, originally airing September 29th, 1966, starts out with Captain Kirk on the USS Enterprise wanting to be apprised of the situation of the dying planet Psi 2000. Their mission to observe and document the planet's breakup. He sends down Mr. Spock and Lieutenant Joe Tourmaline to find out what has happened to the crew and the status.
Yes, so it starts on the planet with how the Enterprise gets infected and Tourmaline's disregarding of safety protocols. The safety protocols are a bit strange because if you listen to the voiceover in the captain's log, you're expecting to find, the Enterprise was expecting to find a live group of scientists, but instead everyone's dead and Spock and Tourmaline are in hazmat suits, environment suits of some kind. The kind you can, just lift under the hood and touch your face, though. But it's unexplained why they thought they needed to be in hazard attire when they were expecting to just talk to some scientists and take them out. But nonetheless, they are doing hazard protocols, and Tourmaline blatantly disregards them, taking his glove off to scratch his nose and getting some strange red liquid to touch his hand.
That's not the only strange thing. We find these frozen people that have passed away, or shall we say frozen mannequins?
Yes, so Tourmaline tells Spock, we don't see it, the impression we're given is that this would be too expensive to produce, a man frozen to death fully clothed in the shower, but there is a thing lying on the floor there where Spock says, this woman has clearly been strangled, and well, no, Spock, that woman is clearly a mannequin. What can we say? It was made for television in 1966 when color was newfangled, or at least widespread color was a pretty new thing, and broadcasting in color was fairly new, and there was going to be some fuzziness in the analog TV. Maybe people weren't meant to see that it was a mannequin, but we're watching on Paramount Plus, and I don't know if it's 4K. It's at least 1080p. We're getting most, if not all, of the information that is encoded on those films, and we can see it's a mannequin.
But it's supposed to be a dead crew person, and, Sulu and Riley are supposed to be on top of their safety measures, but we find that Riley having...
Tourmaline? No worries, they're disposable.
Yes. Joe Tourmaline. The only lieutenant junior grade until below decks arrives again. They mentioned that that the sleeve insignia of his rank with a single broken stripe, he has been the only member of the Enterprise crews to have ever shown that insignia. So that's kind of funny.
And I don't know about... so the current season of Lower Decks, I think it's Lower Decks Season 4, has Mariner and Boimler as lieutenants junior grade, and they've got a little the black pin in rank insignia. It's the collar rank insignia in the 24th century uniforms, but in the 23rd century it's a single sleeve, so I guess that's a one-off in all of Star Trek to see a 23rd century lieutenant junior grade.
I think that the subtext of The Naked Time is the drunk time.
Yes.
Because every main character and not so main character gets an opportunity to act without inhibitions.
Yeah. It's a different interpretation on a drunken person trope. and we get to see Sulu, the happy drunk, and we get to see Nurse Chapel, who is the emotional drunk, and we get to see the aggressive drunk in Tourmaline. We get to see Spock have
the
his
sad drunk.
Yeah. And Kirk is a little bit that way too.
He's the obsessed with the ship drunk. Like his true love happens to be the ship.
Yeah.
And he has to even deny his own attraction to his yeoman because the ship comes first.
Yeah, but before he says, I can't notice my yeoman, because Yeoman Rand is gorgeous, and he says he can't notice her because he's the captain, okay. Before that, he's talking to the Enterprise and says, I love you, right?
He's talking to the ship.
Yeah, the ship.
Yeah, and
he has nothing to hide. Like, his secret is not a secret.
And he refers to the ship as she.
And that's traditional, sure.
So he's like, there's a reason why she's a she, or it's a she, or anyways, the USS Enterprise is a she. And then we get Sulu able to lean into his swashbuckling best Three Musketeers impression, where he boldly takes off his shirt. And we see
the shirtless, chiseled Sulu jumping through the corridors, assaulting folks, and demanding to fight Richelieu.
Yes.
It's hilarious and it's wonderful.
Where his chest has not gone before.
And we haven't read Sulu's. We haven't read George Takei's memoir yet. I just got done with Patrick Stewart's.
I'm currently in the middle.
We'll get to George Takei's memoir, but this apparently was his favorite episode to film, and
he spends an entire chapter on it in his autobiography.
I'll believe it. It looks like a lot of fun, and Sulu is given a meaty and fun part to play.
Yay! Justice for Takei. And then we also get the Irish trope of the too much drinking and singing I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen. Lieutenant Riley is singing.
And there's even foreshadowing of this, which I find I love it. When Riley is in sickbay before he goes and locks himself in engineering, he is sad about Tourmaline dying, and he approaches Nurse Chapel and says, he wasn't an Irishman, and he makes these statements that, like, everyone who's had a drunk uncle has experienced.
Oh yeah, I think he said something like he didn't have the luck of the Irish on his
something like
something.
that.
That's why he didn't survive.
It kind of doesn't matter exactly what he said. He was talking about being an Irishman in that way that the drunk uncle would talk about. It was amusing.
I don't have that drunk uncle. I don't know how many.
I don't have any uncles.
Right.
But
we just imagine.
I've had avuncular figures, men in my life who are of an older generation, say things that were nonsensical like that at occasions.
Gotcha.
And I think that's what they were channeling.
Now, there's some serious turns in here. When Sulu gets too grabby, he grabs Uhura.
He thinks he's rescuing her.
Yes, and she's not in want of his protection, and tries to rebuff him, and Captain Kirk has to try and intervene, and he does so unsuccessfully. That Spock has to calmly walk across there, and the
first ever Vulcan nerve pinch
is deployed. That first Vulcan nerve pinch. However, strangely enough, I was reading the notes, and they said that although it's the first time we see it, it wasn't the first time it was deployed. It was technically deployed earlier, but because of the way that they show episodes, We saw this before the actual first time he used the
Okay.
Vulcan nerve pinch.
So we're going to see some episodes that were produced earlier than this? Okay.
With
I did not know this.
I did not know this. I just saw a note that said that.
But I mean, this is the larger point, that this episode is the fourth to be aired, and it's the first time we see all the main characters
Yay!
in doing their classic thing. We have Kirk and Spock and McCoy and Sulu and Scotty and Uhura.
And even Pavel Chekhov.
Oh, Pavel Chekhov is in this episode? I didn't see him. I think he gets added later in the series, doesn't he?
It's he's listed in the cast.
Okay, he must have been there, but he wasn't a major part. But
Janice Rand is also there.
And Janice Rand. Janice Rand and Nurse Chapel are mains as well.
Right.
And this was even in the notes. It said that this is the only time we see Rand, Chapel, and
she gets,
Uhura together.
She gets to appear, but actually they consider her a guest appearance.
Oh, Nichelle Nichols?
No, Majel Barrett.
Oh.
Nurse Christine Chapel is appearing as a guest.
I guess she's a recurring character, but not a main.
And then there's Kevin Thomas Riley was acted by Bruce Hyde. Lieutenant Joe Tourmaline was Stuart Moss. The amorous crewman. They call him the amorous crewman. I think this is the mysterious amorous crewman.
Yeah, the one who was
His
harassing.
name is William Knight.
William Knight. Okay. Yes. So late in the episode, Yeoman Rand is trying to get back to the bridge, and Crewman Knight is kind of dancing in front of her, blocking her access to the turbolift. And we even see Spock come by, and she says, "Spock, get him to stop." And he orders him to stand down, and he lets her pass, but then runs back in front of her as soon as Spock's back is turned.
I think it was Captain Kirk.
Oh, that was Captain Kirk, not Spock? Okay.
That's okay.
I was remembering wrong.
That's all right. It was written by John D.F. Black, directed by Mark Daniels, and it is consistently remarked upon as one of the best episodes of the original Star Trek series.
I think so. I was trepidatious about this. I had skipped over it on previous watches of TOS. I haven't seen all of TOS. I've started watching TOS a few times, and I never watched this, probably because the Next Generation tribute episode to it is so bad.
I had never seen this. I had never seen George Takei play Captain Sulu in such a amazing, funny way. I always saw, Lieutenant Sulu as more of a button-up type, very tightly wound, always diligent about his job, and I didn't know that he could be this funny. So this was the first time I'm glad I caught this episode, because I wouldn't have known that there was this rich character in him. This person who could have been the fourth musketeer in Three Musketeers, looking and searching for the bad guy Cardinal Richelieu all the time in the hallways and whatnot.
I really appreciate this opportunity for Sulu and Takei before Sulu gets infected, where we see he likes fencing, he likes going to the gym, he likes jostling with the guys, ribbing them, being one of the guys. And I think that was important to show that
because he's Asian?
Yeah. Because, there's
a lot of racism.
Yeah, there was a lot of racism. It was still the 1960s. Nichelle Nichols and George Takei are the non-white people on the cast. And we see for a brief moment in this interchange in the cafeteria, when we're expecting Tourmaline to back Sulu up and say fencing is great, right? This is Tourmaline's moment to be all like, oh no, we're polluting space. But before then, we see Takei, who is just fully part of the crew and behaving like a good old boy, like the rest of them.
Okay, yeah, no, I see your point. I mean, in this episode, Sulu is happy, funny, and you could see that he really was having a good time with Riley. I think Riley and him had good chemistry. In an earlier episode, I think the one where this is the episode where there was that lady who was looking at was McCoy's ex-girlfriend, but
Right.
was an alien.
Yeah.
There is a scene with Sulu.
Yes.
And Officer Rand, and it's a funny episode because the thing that I remember from it is that in Sulu's room there is this fake plant that's obviously a person's hand. Moving the plant
Right.
around.
We get the
a
plant in his
puppet.
quarters.
That was the most funny and random scene ever, but I just remember that looks like a hand. It was clearly a hand puppet, and that is the special effects that we have
Yes.
in that episode, that very early episode. Anyway, no, but we had seen him.
That was in the man trap.
The man trap, and he was smiling and having a good old time with Officer Rand in that scene. So I had seen him already in there, and he looked like part of the crew there already. But here we really get to know how funny he can be, how invested he was in his swashbuckling hero phase, and it was a lot of fun. And then we also contrast it with the first time I ever saw Spock cry. Which,
Right.
Two big ones here. That's why this is probably
So me
why.
too. I don't know if I'd seen it done to Spock. I know from watching newer Star Trek that when like the Vulcan emotion suppression is robust, but when it breaks down, and that can be the central part of a plot. And here we see it right up front for the first time that when Spock's emotion control, suppression, whatever it is compromised, he just starts weeping and it all comes out. And it's really interesting to watch.
It is so incredibly sad and moving.
And he's in this awful state, but it's so fun to watch.
It's so interesting. And it gets initiated by Christine Chappell, the nurse. She was infected, and she starts getting emotional and drinking. And
Well, she's not drinking. She's behaving as if she were drinking.
maybe I just associate it with drinking
Because it's drunk behavior.
Well, I felt like she had a drink or something, but I don't know. I have to see it over. But when she sees Spock, she starts into this sort of melancholy, wistful tone, and then she shares with him that she loves him, and he's trying to kind of leave her, but she's touching him, so of course he's going to get infected.
Yeah, that's the vector.
And then she says, I know your mother is human. Like, can you basically look deep within your heart and find some sort of emotion for me, and maybe we could have something here.
Yeah. And it's like, for anyone who's ever been one of the last few people to leave wherever it is you're at, and you're there with whoever else was the one of the last few people to leave wherever it is you're at, and it's someone you'd never thought about, and all of a sudden, they've been drinking and they start pouring to you, and you're a little bit like, huh? And especially if it's, I've been secretly crushing on you, and you're like, huh? Okay.
You have experience with this?
This has happened to me.
Really? Oh yeah, okay.
In college I was very hot, if I do say so myself, and there were some, and I was also geeky, and there were some geeky women to whom I was not attracted, who, made their moves, and I had to very politely say, no, thank you.
Well, I was talking about Spock.
But like Spock is an alien, but it's a very human situation.
It's a very human situation. When I think back to the times when people have inadvertently told me that they had more feelings for me than I had ever considered, I did not react like Spock, though. Spock, because I think he was infected, he shuts himself in his room and sobs these massive crying sobs of human emotion. And it's just this moment of humility and in some ways some power you can have in showing so much vulnerability. The tough exterior that he has most of the time, that's how we see him, that's how I remember him, and at no point have I ever seen him break down in this way. And I'm just in awe of the power of that moment, because you don't realize how vulnerability can be a source of strength. And I was amazed to see it, and I was very touched by it, by that moment. And there was a lot of crazy in this episode. You have to see it to believe it.
And also Leonard Nimoy is still wearing eyeshadow. It's kind of purple lavender. Very obvious.
I have to say, Leonard Nimoy, that's what I meant to say, is that across all the acting that he's ever done, I suddenly saw him as a pretty great actor. I mean, it's weird because I just take the character of Spock so for granted. And then I see this scene and I'm like blown away by him, by Leonard Nimoy, not Spock, but Leonard Nimoy's capacity to act, because it's like, wow, he's been hiding all this, all his chops. Just to think how much you have to, contain in order to play someone who has no emotion and not be able to show that at any point in time. It's very difficult, actually. You keep it suppressed and bottled up, and where does it go? So it's the actor I kind of feel for. Spock himself, though, that's all he knows, right? Mm-hmm. So then we don't really need to feel sorry for Spock. But being human, knowing that this is Leonard Nimoy's craft and, choice of acting. I hope he had some fun as this character.
I think so. And here's something unique about Leonard Nimoy. We look at what happened in the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and we see all the other characters get their one-off appearance in later Star Trek. But Spock, as Leonard Nimoy as Spock, keeps coming back repeatedly. Like, he gets easily 10 times more old Spock screen time in the 90s and 2000s in various incarnations of Star Trek. And it must be because he loved doing it.
Yeah, I hope so, because he's incredible. And I just recently found this out. So, having taken him for granted, I really wanted to give him a shout out for being so great, especially in this episode. I just loved him in this episode. It was wonderful. It was touching, and he and George Takei stole the show. Both of them were so amazing in this. It made the Naked Time a fun time to watch, especially since we saw the English first, and anyone who listened to it knows that we went through a lot. We
watched the English episode 4 before we watched this,
and this was just such a nice way to kind of cap off the night watching both the shows.
Yeah. All right, so let's wrap it up. Hardee, what's your ranking?
I I say this is up there with the Cage for me, so it's a 4-star.
I'm the same. This is a 4-star episode. This is as good as Star Trek can be. And if you were only going to watch one episode of 60 years of Star Trek, this would not be a bad one to choose.
Agree. Good night,
right.
everyone.
Good night.
Thanks for joining us,
Bye-bye.
and we'll see you next time.